Hello there, Steve here in Sydney. I'm going to talk to you about a problem on the internet, the wonderful experience invented by modern technology and people of great vision from a long time ago. And I'd just like to say that the wonderful positive experience the internet could be is often spoiled when you've got your handcrafted video up there and you've got something to say, something to show people. You've got a subject to talk about, and beneath your handcrafted video that you've put together with such effort and such a forethought, you start to get malcontents and undesirables camping underneath your video, bad-mouthing you and head-kicking all the other visitors to your video. I'm here going to propose a method of dealing with pseudo-skeptics. I'm sure you've all come across the phrase pseudo-skeptics. They are defined in Wikipedia as cowardly, dysfunctionally timid males. You can look it up. Susan Blackmore, she's a leading skeptic, she provided that part of the definition. Mario Truzzi invented the word pseudo-skeptic. He was a skeptic himself. So the word pseudo-skeptic is in Wikipedia. Do look it up. Now, all they want to do is spoil everything. So I'm going to suggest to you a way of turning their attempts to spoil everything and ruin everything into a positive to get rid of them, or certainly reduce their presence on the internet by a kind of automatic feedback mechanism. The key to dealing with these people is to recognize them very early, and that's very easy if you know the few key words they use repetitively all over the internet. Thousands and thousands of these pseudo-skeptics. All they really want to do is head kick everyone they meet while posing as a scientist, and they use a few pseudo-scientific words that they actually get from a magician called James Randi. He radicalizes them all and asks them all, encourages them all to attack religious and spiritually minded people and anyone who possibly understands or is a proponent of telepathy. Well, there's a couple of very easy ways to spot these people, and I'm going to give you some tips here. I'm going to make a web page of refutations of all their outrageous rhetorical claims, such as there is no evidence of something. Skeptics, pseudo-skeptics love to say that. There is no evidence of something. Typically it's telepathy or afterlife, something like that. When in fact there's a huge amount of information, evidence, burgeoning evidence, more than you can handle, available weekly in a free email from victorzammit.com. Just subscribe there, you'll get the email. And it's a vast amount of evidence. Now, what would you do with this Victor Zammit search connection you could make to the person putting the idea that there is no evidence? Well, it's very simple. As soon as they type that phrase, you block them and you put a pat answer, 500 characters long maximum. You have it ready on a Word document. Okay? And you just paste it in and say that's all that person's ever going to say. So that every time they say there is no evidence, evidence of the afterlife in a huge amount appears directly above their entry, contradicting them, refuting them. The same thing goes for telepathy. Telepathy was a done deal, completely proven by the year 1950. There's a Chris Carter article about this in the Epoch Times. I'll put a link below this video. And he writes a couple of articles wondering why do these pseudo-skeptics keep denying what is acceptable in a court of law? Why do they keep doing this? That there's something peculiar about the mindset and the brain operation of pseudo-skeptics, that they're different to the rest of us. I'll put a link there to the Chris Carter Epoch Times articles. Another key word that you would have to block on as soon as you see it, block the person, stop them typing anymore, and just put your refutation in. When they say, but your evidence is anecdotal, that's meaningless, well, you have to point out to them that when someone asks you the time and you call it out across the room, that's an anecdotal report and it's probably real. And when your mother says you're late getting out of bed, that's another anecdote. And businesses are run on anecdotes. When the manager says we're running out of cornflakes, get some more. That's anecdotal running of a business. The whole world runs on this anecdotal thing, and James Randi is just given his pseudo-skeptics basically strangleholds, chokeholds, and headlocks and that sort of thing, to try and shut everybody up who opposes his narrow paradigm of 19th century materialism. But you would have an anecdote response that you write after you've blocked the person. Okay, it's another 500 character little paragraph you've written in your Word doc. It sits there waiting, okay, for someone to write the word anecdote under your handcrafted video, which is not what you want to talk about. Another phrase that you could block on, it's very common coming from pseudo-skeptics, is ad hominem. They always want to lecture people on the rules of argument, the rules of debate, but they will heap abuse on you and heap verbal violence upon you, and then as soon as you say anything back, they'll go, oh, that's ad hominem, that's not fair, you're proving you're a lesser person than myself, you see, and I've won the argument. Well, it's not actually true. You could write a simple refutation to that, saying that we have to take into account people's character for repeating lies every day of their life on the internet, which is what all these claims are about. There is no evidence of this and that. They never look up anything, they never cite anyone, they never give references to anyone about why they believe there is no evidence of, when in fact the evidence is burgeoning for telepathy, afterlife, all sorts of non-material things. Another key word that you would block on is they have words native to their own personal territory, their own psychological bent. And this is the word gullible. It crops up in all their complaints, that you must be so gullible for believing this, believing that. In the same context, they normally say, so gullible you believe in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. Now you've got to ask the question, why do so many grown adults, 60 and 70 years old, still talk about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny? Well, there's an answer to that. Many of them were traumatized by the Santa Claus myth when they discovered it was a myth. And guess what they did when they found out there was no Santa Claus? They had believed it so implicitly, they come to hate themselves, that's part of it, for being so gullible. And that's the key word that always crops up from their childhood, gullible. Everyone's gullible like I must have been. They basically say, I believe in Santa Claus, and I've shown myself to be so gullible that I'm never going to believe anything again. I'm never going to fall in love again with any idea. Okay, does that sound familiar? I'll never fall in love again with an idea. So I'm going to be a skeptic for the rest of my life and not believe anything, because I was so traumatized by discovering that Santa Claus was really just a myth. And I hate myself for being so gullible. Now, we do know that pseudo-skeptics lack confidence and detest themselves. They practice self-loathing. This is pointed out by psychiatrists. So, when you see the word gullible being typed in your column, you simply stop them typing anymore and you write your refutation that why don't you try forgiving yourself for believing something? It's okay to be wrong, and us grown-ups don't care about being wrong. It's okay by us. Some little children are deeply distressed by being wrong because they have the infantile photographic memory of a child under the age of 12, and adolescent hormones did not transform their physical brain into a metaphorical thinking machine. It remained an infantile, literal thinking machine. So you can explain this to them in 500 characters, give them links, references, that sort of thing. And so you've got a few refutations you can type when they can't reply anymore. You get the last word with these refutations, which you have ready in a Word document, each less than 500 characters for YouTube. Another form that's more difficult to put a keyword on is those narcissistic adults who've still got the small brain of a child. They always avoid the subject, arguing off subject so they don't need to know anything, because their main aim is head-kicking you in a slow, venomous way with constant sneering that you're just not up to it. You just don't get it, do you? You just don't know, you excrement. You know? And this is another type of narcissism. Some of these people seem to be intelligent, but they are not, because they won't actually discuss the subject matter of your video. They'll talk around it, always talking about the rules of evidence and the rules of argument, like they are Oxford debaters or something, which they never are, because all they really do is parrot a few key phrases from James Randi and the other ringleaders of the pseudo-skeptic, Richard Wiseman, Christopher French, Susan Blackmore, etc. Another very famous phrase picked up from James Randi was a lie that he has since admitted is a lie, that it's wrong. The famous phrase parroted by many thousands of pseudo-skeptics making other people's life a damn misery online is James Randi says, and they all parrot in unison, you can't disprove a negative when you talk about afterlife or life after death, something like that, anything non-material after physical death. That you can't disprove a negative seems to be a clever turn of phrase from some debating society, but in fact it's completely false, it's misleading, and it's tripped up every pseudo-skeptic on the planet. The reason being that the evidence for the afterlife is actually very positive. It's a large body of evidence garnered over 100 years of research and still continues today with out-of-body experiences, after-death experiences, connections with seemingly people that keep on living after physical death, and they can prove their identity through mediums. There's vast libraries of this being accumulated for the last 100 years, and it's getting bigger and bigger every day. Victor Zammit once again provides this evidence in a weekly email, and it grows and grows and grows, and it integrates, happily supported by, the very latest developments in string theory, quantum physics, etc. Modern day physicists are very much at home with ESP, whereas parapsychologists are not, and parapsychologists are mostly pseudo-skeptics. Okay, talking about Richard Wiseman, Peter French, those sorts of people, and they basically continually reiterate what are effectively criminal lies. As simple as that. The lying of pseudo-skeptics is a daily criminal offence they commit, for which there is no punishment in the public domain. But you wouldn't get away with it in a courtroom. You'd be arrested for contempt of court and probably end up in jail. Okay? Pseudo-skeptics are simply incapable of adjudicating honestly evidence as it presents. They can't work their way through a trail of evidence. It's not possible. There's something wrong with their physical brains. It's the way they think, likely damaged in childhood. Okay? So, refuting them so that every time they make one of these ridiculous statements, there is no evidence, you have a refutation ready and stop them typing any further. So that whatever they do, whatever they say, all their favourite key phrases ends with a refutation. An advertisement for the opposite side of the argument, where you've got all the facts and figures at your fingertips thanks to the wonderful, absolutely wonderful internet. Okay, that's the whole idea, and I think we can reduce the presence of the pseudo-skeptics greatly on the internet. They're a dying race anyway, because most people watch telepathy programs on the TV these days anyway, and afterlife is proven anyway. Murderers and murder victims are contacted on television shows and do provide evidence to show where the bodies are found. This is used by police departments. There are many, many of these on record. Can I say one more thing about afterlife evidence? There's something called advanced search on Google, where you can search an entire website, and a particularly good one is if you want to know something about who the hell is Susan Blackmore, high priestess of skepticism. Well, she was until she left and became a pseudo-Buddhist or something. She's mentioned many hundreds of times in Victor Zammit's website, and what you do is use advanced Google, just type in Blackmore, and you search victorzammit.com, and you'll get all the iterations of that word Susan Blackmore. It's quite a lot, it's a long listing. So you can catch up on a lot of things and use it as a giant encyclopedia of the afterlife. That's using advanced Google search. Summing up, I'll just say that pseudo-skeptics, the social menace, are really just juvenile delinquents, breaking every window they can and running like hell, head-kicking strangers while posing as a scientist for 2 or 3 entries, venomously sneering at people. Everyone else is garbage except them. best way to deal with them is to have a pat refutation ready from a 500 character entry in a Word document. So you can have 10 refutations ready for every time one of these key phrases, key